Well, hello and happy Thursday. My name is Kyle Thiem from the National Weather Service office in Peachtree City, Georgia. And this is your weekly weather briefing for North and Central Georgia here on Thursday, November 17th, 2022. So some of the highlights that we'll be talking about, first and foremost, we do have a freeze warning that's going to be in effect tonight for the majority of the forecast area outside counties that have already been excluded from the frost freeze program this year, because we are expecting some overnight lows in the 20s as a cold front pushes through the area and starts to fizzle out. And then as we move into the weekend, we see we're going to have a high pressure dominated weather pattern through the weekend, which is going to mean cold, calm, and dry conditions are going to be expected. And then as we move into next week, it looks like we could have some temperatures and moisture gradually increasing through the beginning of next week, with some increasing rain chances there on Tuesday, Wednesday, and into Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, which we'll take a sneak peek at towards the end of this briefing. So taking a look at some of the current conditions, here are some temperatures as of 11 a.m. on Thursday. We can see we are gradually warming up, but as we move into those northern sectors of our forecast area, we do see a cold front that is pushing through. So temperatures up in far North Georgia are having a time trying to recover a little bit this morning, but under some clear skies should have no troubles reaching highs up around the 50s as we get into the afternoon. But we can see the cold front there that is draped through the northern part of the state with some good dry air behind it. It's going to keep us mostly dry in through at least the weekend. Before we get there, we do have to deal with the overnight temperatures tonight. As we mentioned, they're going to be mostly in the 20s with a couple pockets of somewhere between 30 and 32. But we do have freeze warnings that are in effect for the majority of central Georgia in through the I-85 corridor and south. And several of those freeze warnings also include areas around the coastlines and off into southeastern Alabama, where their frost freeze programs are still active. Areas like far north and northwest Georgia, as well as far eastern Georgia in the GSP and Columbia weather forecast offices, their frost freeze programs have already ended for the year. Likely this will be the last one we'll issue for this season, as our ending date is November 20th, but with temperatures expected this low, even down as far south as Americus, McRae, and Vidalia, more than likely that'll be enough to end any ongoing vegetation growth that may be down in those regions, likely ending it for our area this season. Speaking of the cold, here's a look at our general pattern in for the next week, and this is looking at heights of the atmosphere about midway up through the atmosphere. Areas there in cooler colors are abnormally low pressure regions, whereas the warmer colors are abnormally high pressure regions. And you can kind of think of this map as anything that is in the cooler colors typically are going to have much cooler temperatures, whereas the warmer colors are going to have warmer temperatures down near the surface. So as we can see, starting out this week, here's Thursday, Friday, Saturday into Sunday, we are draped in that really deep trough that has been anchored over the eastern U.S. For the last week or so. And that is going to stick around at least through the weekend, which means we're going to still have some abnormally cool temperatures, anywhere between about 5 to 15 degrees below normal for our region for the next at least 4 days. Then we can see as we move past the weekend, we do start to at least get some higher pressure regions in through the area, which is going to help warm temperatures up just a little bit until you see this this nice sector coming down into the plains. That's going to be a low pressure storm system there, likely moving into the southeast next Thursday. But you see we're going to have basically we're draped in this abnormally cool sector across the central and eastern U.S. That's gradually going to kick out after the weekend, and then we'll have this another storm system that we're going to be dealing with by the end of next week. See here's another wide-scale view, just kind of taking a look at the atmospheric moisture that's going to be in place over the regions over across the next week. We can see at the very start of this animation, we can see a push of dry air starting to come through right here. That's that cold front that's going to be sagging south through Georgia again. We're going to have a reinforcement of this dry air here on Sunday. We can see those reds start to filter in. Those reds, as we look to the upper right, that's very dry air. That's this is a look at moisture anomalies. So we see as we get into those browns and reds, is abnormally dry conditions for the area. But then as we see these greens and blues start to creep up here towards the beginning of next week, this is Tuesday into Wednesday here, that is when we start to get some moisture coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico, which is actually going to increase some rain chances into the area by the time we get into early mid next week. but chances are still going to be a little bit low, so we'll have to keep an eye on those going forward. All right, so what is all this going to mean for our weather conditions down near the surface, where we live? So right now today we can see we have a high pressure region in through most of the southern plains. We can see this little trough region. This is that cold front we were talking about over Georgia that is going to push through and kind of fizzle out as it does so. We can see as we move past today into Friday and Saturday, we see we have another cold front that's going to be pushing through as we get into the weekend. And behind that, we have a very stout high pressure system, which is really going to set up across the southern plains and the southeast through the weekend, which should give us some decently dry conditions, although there's a chance here on Sunday we could see, depending on the location of this high pressure system, if it does set up a little bit further west, we could have some slight rain chances down in southern Georgia. But that remains to be seen. As of right now, the forecast has the high pressure east enough in through like the mid-Mississippi region valley that should keep most of that moisture down a little bit further south and keep us dry. But there is an outside chance maybe late Saturday night we could have some pops in southern Georgia. But so far our forecast area does look dry. But once we get past Sunday, we see this high pressure starts to move out over the region. See, Monday it's kind of concentrated in the Appalachians area, but by the time we get into Tuesday, we start having that high pressure creep up the eastern coastline. We can see the way winds circulate clockwise around this high pressure system means we're going to have some winds coming in from the east off of the Atlantic, bringing in some moisture back into the area. So by Tuesday, there's a chance, especially for areas down south in southern Georgia, we could see some light precip crop up back around the area. Then as we get into Wednesday, that high pressure again starting to scoot off towards the northeast, and as it does so, we lose a lot of the influence from that high pressure around the region. Moisture starts to increase through the area. And then we get in through Thursday, where we can see that low pressure system starting to move into the Ozarks and the mid-Mississippi River Valley. That's going to help pull a lot of this Gulf moisture northward. And then at some point, somewhere between Wednesday night and most likely Thursday night, we're going to have this system start to pass through us, likely giving us some decent rain chances for the area. Before we get there, though, we'll take a look at the temperature forecast. This is for Atlanta specifically, but can be a general proxy for all areas of the forecast area. If you're in North Georgia, just subtract about 3 to 5 degrees from this temperatures. If you're in Central Georgia, you can add about 3 to 5. Somewhere around Atlanta to Athens, though, these should be pretty accurate. And basically what I wanted to show here, these dotted lines here are normal temperature ranges, and the columns here are our forecast temperatures for Atlanta. And as you can see, we're well below normal, especially for today. Our high temperature is increased a little bit since then in our forecast, but we're likely looking at upper 40s, low 50s. Even that, though, is just barely above the normal low for this time of year. And as you can see, these low temperatures here dipping into the 20s tonight, and for Friday morning, going to be abnormally cold. So that's why the freeze warning is in effect for tonight. But as you see, we get into the weekend, we gradually start to warm up little by little until we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, where we get a little bit closer to those normal high temperatures for this time of year. Moving on, looking at our precip chances, our first decent chance for precipitation in the forecast area is going to come Tuesday, but even then chances are relatively low, kind of around 20% around that I-20 corridor, and in towards central Georgia getting into 30-40%. And then as we go in through Wednesday, those chances do start to gradually increase as that high pressure again moves off towards the northeast. Looking at precip chances, though, right now still somewhere within about the 20 to 30% range through the day on Wednesday. See, as far as our 7-day rainfall accumulation goes, those slight precip chances will lead towards maybe some light accumulations across the region, but we're not expecting anything major. At most, maybe an inch if some locally higher amounts do occur, but on average, closer to somewhere around 1/4 of an inch for the most of the forecast area in through 7 days. That's going to lead into our drought, current ongoing drought. This is the look at our drought summary that was just released this morning. There was very little improvement from last week's, but all in all, very little change. It's about the same. And given what our forecast rainfall accumulation values are, for at least for the next 7 days, it's very likely that this isn't going to have much improvement going in through those time frames, especially as they end the forecast range from Tuesday to Tuesday, and then it's published on the next Thursday. So given in through next Tuesday, we don't really have a whole lot of rain chances. Likely could see this worsening as we go into next week. Now taking a quick break, and let's get a sneak peek for Thanksgiving, technically outside of our forecast range, but given it's a high impact holiday, we wanted to touch on it a little bit. And this is a look at just one model system for that Thanksgiving afternoon. And basically what we're seeing here is a stout low pressure region starting to dip into the southern plains, into the southeast, bringing with it a good amount of rain. Currently, the exact timing and placement of the system is uncertain, so we could see this rain moving up to Wednesday night. More than likely, most of the trends are pushing this into Thursday night, but that really remains to be seen. If we take all of these systems averaged together, it is kind of targeting that Thursday time slot, kind of as with the most confidence, but trends are starting to push it back just ever so slightly, so there's some chances this could be moved off into Thursday night. Heaviest rains likely into Thursday night into Friday morning as kind of the current thinking, but this is subject to change. This low pressure system, basically it's a short wave that's going to be kicking out a week in advance, and historically our accuracy about 7 days out for those tiny little waves of these low pressure systems tends to be pretty low. So remains to be seen, but we are at least expecting something in towards the Thanksgiving holiday. Severe potential right now is very uncertain, and it's going to heavily depend on the timing. If this thing moves through, especially in the afternoon where we get the main push of moisture coming in from the system, we could have temperatures high enough to have at least some isolated severe, but at least as of right now, if the timing comes through overnight, which is the current thinking, we could have a reduced severe potential at least with this, but it remains to be seen, and we're going to keep an eye on this as the forecast continues throughout the next week. And then taking a chance, look at the chance of precipitation for next Thursday. Again, we can see that increase as we go in through the day, about 40% area-wide for the Thanksgiving holiday, but our temperatures are going to be relatively good because we are pulling that warm, moist air out of the Gulf. So if precip chances hold off a little bit, we could have some decent temperatures in throughout the region. Highs are in the 60s currently as we get into next Thursday. And that's been your weekly weather briefing. So just to summarize, we do have a freeze warning in effect tonight as we have overnight lows plummeting back down into the 20s. So it's going to be pretty cold out there, low 20s for far north Georgia, upper 20s for southern Georgia with some pockets of around 30. But as we move in through the next several days, we're going to have a couple dry cold fronts push through with high pressure systems back behind them. So most likely we're looking at cold, calm, and dry conditions in through at least next Monday, if not continued onward. But temperature and moisture is going to gradually start increasing about early to mid next week, especially into Tuesday and Wednesday. We start to see some rain chances come back. And a sneak peek at Thanksgiving, right now there's a shot it could be a wet Thanksgiving holiday, but at least warm temperatures will start to come up in that way. So we're not looking at extremely cold temperatures, but highs most likely in the 60s with a shot of rain, which we'll have to hone in with the forecast as we go through the next week. And with that, this is our contact info if you guys have any questions for us. If not, we will wish you a good week and see you back here next week. Thank you.